She was already inside when he opened the door, not at the front entrance, the service entrance, the one that opened from the underground garage into the kitchen corridor of the Alderton penthouse on the 54th floor, the entrance that bypassed the concierge desk and the elevator log, and the front desk attendant who had been instructed 8 months ago to call ahead before sending anyone up. Thomas Alderton had flown back from Geneva a day early because the meeting had ended at noon, and he had, for reasons he couldn't articulate in the car to the airport, simply wanted to go home. He had not called ahead. He was in his own building, his own penthouse, the residence he had owned for 11 years. He did not need to call ahead. The kitchen corridor was dim, and the penthouse was supposed to be empty, and the woman standing just inside the door was Rosa Medina, who had cleaned this apartment twice a week for 6 years. She turned when she heard the door. She looked at him with an expression he had never seen on her face in 6 years of Tuesday and Friday mornings. Not surprise, not the small professional composure she always brought to her work. Something different, something that told him, before she said a single word, that whatever was happening in this apartment right now was something he was not prepared for. She crossed the kitchen in 3 steps and put her hand on his arm and said very quietly, "Mr. Alderton, please stay quiet." His hands began to tremble before he understood why. 6 years earlier, Rosa Medina had taken the position with Alderton Household Services the same week her daughter started community college. Those two facts were not unrelated. The Alderton account was the best-paying residential position the agency offered, a full penthouse twice weekly, with a supply budget and a checklist Rosa had spent 3 months refining until it worked the way good systems work, invisibly and without friction. The pay covered Lucia's tuition with enough left over to send something home to Rosa's mother in Puebla every month, and it came with the kind of professional stability that Rosa, at 44, had learned to value above almost everything else. She had been cleaning houses and commercial properties in this city for 19 years. She had worked for 11 different households, ranging from the merely wealthy to the genuinely rich, and she had developed across those years a set of competencies that she did not advertise and that her employers rarely noticed. She was precise. She was discreet. She remembered everything, and she understood the architecture of other people's lives, their habits, their routines, their quiet deceptions, and their private griefs, with the particular clarity that comes from spending years in the most intimate spaces of those lives while remaining, to the people who lived them, essentially invisible. She had known Thomas Alderton was lonely before he knew it himself. She had seen it in the evidence, the unchanged second pillow, the single wine glass rinsed and left on the rack, the books stacked on the nightstand in the order they were read and never moved because there was no one to displace them. His wife, Catherine, had moved to their Connecticut home full-time 3 years into Rosa's tenure, and then to a small apartment in Paris that Thomas paid for without discussion. The divorce had been filed 18 months ago and had not been finalized for reasons Rosa understood to be primarily financial and secondarily emotional in the way that long marriages are always both. She had also known, because she was present in the apartment twice a week and paid attention and had 19 years of reading the signs of other people's lives, that Thomas Alderton had not been as alone as the single wine glass suggested. Not for the past 8 months. There had been signs. She had not said anything. It was not her place to say anything. But she had noticed a second glass, washed but placed on the wrong shelf, a pillow straightened at an angle. She hadn't left it. A drawer in the bedside table that had been opened and closed, and whose contents she noted without examining, because examining was not her role, but noting was unavoidable. A scent that was not Thomas Alderton's and not Catherine's, and that arrived and departed on the same irregular schedule as a particular set of additional footprints in the white wool rug in the study that she had been cleaning carefully around for 6 months. She had said nothing. She had cleaned, she had come on Tuesdays and Fridays and done her work and gone home. And then, on a Thursday, a day she was not scheduled, a day Thomas Alderton was not supposed to be home, she had received a call from the building's facilities manager about a reported water leak in the penthouse's utility room. The agency had asked her to go in and assess. She had her key. She had let herself in through the service entrance. What she found was not a water leak. This is the part that requires care to explain, because what Rosa Medina discovered in the penthouse on that Thursday afternoon was not one thing. It was several things arranged in a pattern, and it was the pattern rather than any single piece of it that told her what she was looking at. The study had been accessed, not casually. The built-in shelving behind the desk, the section that Thomas Alderton kept locked, had been opened. Rosa knew it had been opened because she had cleaned those shelves twice a week for 6 years, and she knew the exact position of every object on them. And 3 of those objects had been moved. Not dramatically, a quarter inch, half an inch, but moved. The lock itself showed no damage, which told her something. The desk had been accessed as well. The document organizer on the right side of the desk surface, a leather one, dark green, that Thomas used for the papers he was actively working through, had been disturbed in a way that was not the disturbance of use, but the disturbance of search. She stood in the study doorway for a long moment. She did not touch anything. She walked through the rest of the apartment with the careful, systematic attention she brought to her work, and she found 4 more signs of access in rooms where access should not have occurred. The safe in the bedroom closet, whose combination lock had been turned and reset. She knew this because the indicator had shifted from the position Thomas always left it in. A file cabinet in the second bedroom that served as his home office, which was not locked and had been searched. A panel in the utility room behind the water heater that she had never seen opened in 6 years of cleaning, and that was now, very slightly, ajar. She went back to the utility room. She looked at the panel. Behind it, a space she had not known existed, approximately 2 feet deep, containing 2 things. A small fireproof document box that was clearly Thomas Alderton's. She recognized the monogram embossed on the lid, and a device she recognized because her nephew had shown her one once. Explaining what it was, a wireless data transmitter. Small, black, pressed to the back wall with an adhesive strip that was still tacky at the edges. New. Recently placed. Rosa stood in the utility room for a long time. She was not panicking. She did not panic. It was not in her constitution, and 19 years of other people's emergencies had trained it further out of her. She was thinking. She was building, with the methodical precision she brought to every complex task, an understanding of what she was looking at and what it meant, and what the correct next action was. She did not call Thomas Alderton. She did not call the police. Not yet. Not without understanding more. She took 3 photographs on her phone. The panel, the transmitter, the safe's indicator. Then she closed everything she had found open, returned to the positions she had memorized, and left the apartment the way she had entered. She went home. She made tea. She thought for 4 hours. Then she called her nephew, who worked in IT security, and asked him to explain to her in plain language what a device like the one she had seen would be capable of, and who typically used them and why. He told her she did not sleep well that night. Let's hold here for a moment, because what Rosa Medina was sitting with, what she turned over for the next 3 days, while she cleaned other homes and sent money to her mother and helped Lucia study for her accounting exam, was not a simple thing. She had no particular loyalty to Thomas Alderton beyond the professional kind. He was not a warm man. He was not unkind. He was correct and distant and consistent, the kind of employer who never complained and never complimented, and whose primary virtue was reliability. She had worked for him for 6 years, and he had never once asked about her family. She did not expect him to, but she had also worked in his home for 6 years and understood, in the way she understood things through evidence and pattern, that whatever was being done to him, the search desk, the accessed safe, the transmitter behind the water heater panel, was being done by someone he trusted, someone with a key, someone who knew the apartment well enough to know where the panel was and what was behind it. There were 4 people with keys to the penthouse: Thomas, Catherine, the building facilities manager, and the person whose second wine glass Rosa had been cleaning from the wrong shelf for 8 months. Catherine was in Paris. The facilities manager had been employed by the building for 11 years without incident, which left the 4th person, the one whose footprints Rosa had been cleaning from the white wool rug, the one who had been in this apartment unsupervised while Thomas Alderton was in Geneva, the one who, Rosa now understood, had used that access not for warmth or company, but for something else entirely. She thought about Lucia's tuition. She thought about her mother in Puebla. She thought about the account and the stability and the particular irreplaceability of a position that had taken her 19 years to earn. She thought about what her own mother had told her once when Rosa was 12 years old and had stayed silent about something she should have spoken about. Silence is only neutral when nothing is happening. When something is happening, silence has a side. On the third day, she made a decision. She called the building's security director, not the facilities manager, the security director, a distinction she had researched carefully, and reported what she had found. She did not speculate. She stated facts in the order she had found them, with the 3 photographs as documentation. She was precise and calm and clear. The security director listened without interrupting. When she finished, he said, "Miss Medina, how long have you been aware of this?" I needed to be certain of what I was looking at before I called. There was a pause. "That was the right decision," he said. Thomas Alderton landed at the private terminal at 4:15 p.m. on a Thursday and was in the car by 4:30. He had not called ahead. He had not told his assistant, who was still in Geneva closing out the details of a deal that had concluded a day early and that had left Thomas with the particular restlessness of someone who had been braced for difficulty and found none. He wanted to go home. He told his driver to take him to the building's underground garage. He took the service entrance because the main elevator required a front desk call-up, and he did not want the front desk call. He wanted to open a door and be in his own home. He opened the door. Rosa Medina was 3 feet away, and she looked at him with the expression that told him, before she said a word, that he was not alone in understanding that something was wrong. She put her hand on his arm. She said very quietly, "Mr. Alderton, please stay quiet." His hands began to tremble, not from fear of Rosa, from the look on her face. The specific look of someone who has been holding something that belongs to another person and has been waiting without knowing when or whether the moment would arrive to give it back. He stayed quiet. What happened in the next 40 minutes was not loud. Rosa led him back through the service corridor and through the kitchen and into the small utility room. Not the one with the panel, a different one. A room used for supplies where she was certain there was no transmitter because she had checked every room in that apartment twice since the Thursday she had found the first one. She had found 3 total. She knew where they were. She had documented all 3. She showed him the photographs on her phone. She told him what she had found and when and in what condition. She told him about the transmitter, what her nephew had explained it could do, and what that meant for the communications, the documents, and the financial materials that had passed through this apartment in the past 8 months. She told him about the safe indicator and the file cabinet, and the built-in shelving and the document box with his monogram that she had found behind the panel. She told him all of this quietly, without drama, without any of the performance of revelation. She was reporting. It was what she did. Thomas Alderton stood with his back against the utility room wall and listened. His hands were not steady. His face had gone very still in the way faces go still when the mind is processing something too large for expression to keep up with. He was 57 years old and had built a technology infrastructure company from a 2-person startup to a publicly traded enterprise with a market capitalization that had cleared $4 billion the previous quarter, and he had believed himself across those 30 years to be a person who understood risk and managed it. He had believed himself to be a person who knew who was in the room. He had not known who was in the room for 8 months. Rosa finished. She waited. He said very quietly, "How long have you known something was wrong?" "I have known something was being accessed since Thursday of last week," she said. "I have suspected for somewhat longer that someone with a key was using the apartment outside of scheduled access. I did not have evidence of the specific nature until last week." He absorbed this. "You didn't call me." "I called the security director," she said. "I did not want to call you before I understood what I was telling you." He looked at her. 6 years of Tuesday and Friday mornings. 6 years of arriving and working and leaving and being to him the reliable mechanism by which the apartment remained functional. 6 years during which he had not asked her name until the 3rd month, had not known she had a daughter until the 4th year, and had not known until this moment in this utility room that she had been paying attention to his life with a precision and a care that he had never extended to hers. He said, "Rosa." It was the first time he had used her name without looking at a calendar to remember it. "Yes," she said. "Why did you tell me?" She looked at him with the patient, level expression of someone for whom the answer is so obvious, it requires a moment to translate into words that explain it. "Because it was happening to you," she said. And silence has a side. What happened in the following weeks moved through several simultaneous tracks, each of them handled by people whose specific expertise made them faster and more complete than any single person could have managed. The building's security director had, in the 3 days between Rosa's call and Thomas's return, contacted a forensic security firm that specialized in corporate intelligence breaches. They had entered the apartment, with Thomas's authorization obtained through channels that did not trigger the apartment's regular access log, and completed a full sweep. The transmitter behind the panel was the most sophisticated of the 3 devices found, capable of intercepting and transmitting encrypted communications from the apartment's network. The documents accessed from the shelving unit were a partial set of deal materials related to an acquisition Thomas had been negotiating. An acquisition, the forensic team noted, whose terms had been leaked 3 weeks ago to a competing party who had used the information to structure a counteroffer that had nearly collapsed the deal. The divorce proceedings provided the legal architecture for what came next. The financial forensics team that Thomas's attorney engaged found over the course of 10 days evidence of systematic document access and third-party disclosure that had been occurring since the week after the separate key had been issued. The full picture was not, in the end, simple. It rarely was in these situations, but it was complete. The divorce settlement, which had been stalled for 18 months, was resolved in 6 weeks. The terms were considerably different from the terms that had been under negotiation before. Thomas had walked through his service entrance on a Thursday evening and found his housekeeper waiting with her hand on his arm and a photograph on her phone. Rosa Medina was asked to provide a formal written account of what she had found and when. She provided it. She was precise, organized, and complete in the way she was precise and organized and complete in everything. Her account was notarized and entered into the legal record and required no supplementation. She went back to work the following Tuesday. Thomas Alderton stood in the kitchen of the penthouse on a Tuesday morning 6 months later and poured 2 cups of coffee from the machine on the counter, not the espresso machine. The regular drip machine that Rosa had told him, once, was what she preferred, and he placed one on the counter at the edge where she was working and stepped back. She looked at the cup. She looked at him. He said, "How is Lucia?" She was quiet for a moment, not from surprise exactly, from the adjustment required when something you have accepted as fixed turns out to be capable of change. She finished her first year, Rosa said. Top of her accounting cohort. He nodded. That's remarkable. Yes, Rosa said. It is. She picked up the coffee. She took a sip. She went back to work. Thomas Alderton stood at the kitchen window and looked out at the city 54 floors below. The grid of streets and the river beyond them and the morning light coming across it all, in the flat, clean way of early spring. And he thought about the architecture of the years behind him, and what they had contained and what they hadn't, and what it meant that the person who had known his home most completely for 6 years had been the person he had known least. He had a great deal to do that day. Important things. Things measured in millions and market positions and the particular high-stakes arithmetic of a life built at the level his had been built. He would do all of it. But he stood at the window for a while first. The city moved below him. Behind him, Rosa worked in her quiet and methodical way, the way she had worked for 6 years, seeing everything, saying only what needed to be said, holding what needed to be held, until the moment arrived to give it to the person it belonged to. The coffee cooled in his hands. He drank it anyway.